What's up, everybody? This is VCentG with another tutorial on how to make a dynamic inventory system. Now, unfortunately, I've recorded this and it took me over 3 hours to make, but for some reason it wasn't picking up any of my audio. So, I have everything already made, and I'm going to have to show you basically what I did. And yeah, so if I miss something, I'm sorry. Leave a comment, ask a question. I'll be happy to help you, but I'm not going to start from the beginning again because I literally just did this. So I'm going to do my best to show you exactly everything that you need to do, if I can even remember everything I did. So I started a sample project here. It literally just had the player object walking. So, first thing we're going to have to do is make our objects, right? You need your items to pick up. So, um, make sure you have those and make sure you have your animations, right? So, I actually never even needed this. But anyway, so make sure you have your animations. I put them all in one. You can see they're here. Now make sure they have an attack animation box, which is this red one. If there isn't one, just hit right-click it and hit Add Keyframe, put the box, and then when the player walks into this red square, they will pick up this item. It's basically how it's going to work. So then also make sure your player has a blue box. Collision detection box, make sure this is here. So let's get into the variables you're going to have to make. I use global variables, or I guess common variables as they're referred to in Pixel Game Maker. You're going to need to make these ones right here. You need to make one per slot that you have with this system, right? So slot 1, slot 2, slot 3. As you'll see in my tutorial that I have 3 slots. I also have 3 items, so you need one variable for each item to have quantity, and then you need one variable for each slot's quantity. And yes, these are different because red mushrooms will not always be in slot 1. They can be in slot 3. So this needs to be here to know which item or how many is left in that slot. And then you also need slot selected. And that's going to control where we are in our menu, because in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make the menu pop up, or the inventory, I'm sorry, pop up, and you'll be able to scroll through it essentially and use the item that you want. You will also need to make a couple groups. I made a HUD group and a collectibles. The collectibles are just items, and HUD is the HUD objects, which we'll go into exactly right now. So this is basically an oversight of how it's going to work. The mushroom exists, and then this link right here, contact with collision, detection of other objects, means when the player walks into this object, it will do this, which is, first of all, disappear, and then it will add red mushrooms to a quantity of red mushrooms. So it will give you 1 red mushroom here. And then, of course, something I forgot, so I guess that's good. Instead of just making it just go invisible, we will actually make it delete. So we will go to 3, or is it on 1? Let's see. It's on 1, destroy object. Now it no longer exists unconditionally after it does all of this, of course. So after it gives you a red mushroom, it's going to set if slot 1 is equal to 0. I guess I should have went into that first. Let's go back to the variables. Okay. So all of these are pretty self-explanatory, except here. Slot 1. If slot 1 is equal to 1, that's going to mean there's a red mushroom there. If it's equal to 2, that means your green mushrooms are going to be there, and if it's equal to 3, that means your blue mushrooms are there. So this is basically what item is in slot 1. So if it's equal to 0, there's nothing. 1 will be red mushroom, 2 green, etc. And same for all of them. 0 means nothing, 1 means red, 2 means green, 3 means blue. So if slot 1 is equal to 0, meaning there's no item there, or slot 1 is already equal to 1, which is a red mushroom, which is the object we're editing, we are going to set slot 1 to 1. So slot 1 will become a red mushroom if it isn't already, and slot 1 quantity will be equal to common variable red mushrooms. So this will change to however many red mushrooms you have, slot 1 quantity. And then it's exactly the same for these other slots. If slot 2 is equal to 0, if slot 2 is equal to 1, which is a red mushroom, slot 3, and then again, slot 2 will be equal to 1, slot 3 will be equal to 1, and then slot 2 quantity equal to your number of red mushrooms, slot 3 equal to the number of your red mushrooms. And then after it does all that, it will destroy the object just to clean up the game. Now I will copy and paste that on all the objects. And we will paste this. So now that you have your red mushroom set up, you can copy that here and paste it and make your other objects, right? So basically in this one, when you go to green mushroom, it's going to be red. And you just need to change everything that says green mushroom or red mushroom or slot 1 equals 1, right? So here it's slot 1 equals 2 because a green mushroom is 2, but if you copy and paste this, this would be 1. So you need to change it to 2. And then you need to go to this one, change it to 2, because now we're on green mushroom. So it's really easy. You just have to make sure you change everything. Slot 1 equal to 2. Slot 1 equal to your green mushrooms now, not your red mushrooms. And then everything else stays the same. You just make sure you change your motion here. Blue mushroom, exactly the same thing, except now you're going to make sure slot 1, 2, and 3 become 3 instead of 1 or 2 because it's a blue mushroom. And then you're going to make sure that your quantity becomes your blue mushrooms, not becomes your red or green. It's really simple. The most annoying part is the more slots you have, obviously there'll be more of these, and the more objects you have, like inventory objects, the more of these there's going to be. So if you want a big inventory and have a lot of different items, this is going to get really tedious really fast. But it is easy to do. You will just have to do a lot of copy and paste and then editing. So it's really not that hard. It's just, it's long. Okay. So now that we have our slots becoming the proper objects, right? So if we pick up a red mushroom, we have our slots become it. If we pick up a green one, pick up a blue one. Now we need our actual slots. So this is a little bit more complicated because I started with blank. I started with a blank game. So it was a lot easier to go through all the steps, and it didn't look as complicated as it probably does here. But like I said, the audio didn't work, so I kind of have to just help figure this out. So we have our 3 slots. As I realized in the other one, you really don't need this slot 3 quantity because we're going to do slot 2 and then we're going to make slot 2 check. So I guess to check if I am correct, I will delete that. So all your slots are going to be the same except the last one, because the last one is not going to become anything if you use the items. Here I have it to, if you use the item in slot 1, it will become slot 2, and slot 2 will become nothing. and then it will check slot 2, and then slot 2 will be like, okay, is there something in slot 3? If yes, I will become what is in slot 3, and slot 3 will become nothing. And then so on, so forth. So yes, that's pretty much how this is going to go down. So I'm not going to go over all these objects because, like I said, they're exactly the same. You're just changing the numbers, right? So here's where we start. This is our default action. So we're going to generate slot 1 item, which is this item here. I guess I'll go into that first so we can kind of see what it is. So the item, this is going to be generated and put on top of our boxes by default. So if we don't have anything, it should be set to nothing. Now if we do, if slot 1 is equal to 1, which means it's a red mushroom, this is going to become a red mushroom, right? And then let's see, object settings. Okay, so, and then in animations, just to go over this really quick, I copied and pasted this, but I removed the attack box so that if somehow the player walks into the menu screen, I don't think it would even do anything, but I just erred on the side of caution and made a separate animation that doesn't have the hitbox, so it can't possibly interact at all. So if slot 1 is equal to 1, which means a red mushroom, it's going to become a red mushroom. And then if slot 1 is not equal to 1, it's going to go back to nothing. Same thing here, slot 1 becomes 2, which is a green mushroom. If it's not equal to 2, back to nothing. If it's equal to 3, if it's not equal to 3, back to nothing. It's super simple. Obviously, the more items you have, the longer this is going to get. But it's just editing, so it's not too bad. So this is going to generate that object. Using generate object, we're going to put slot 1 item. Nothing is, the default action. Center of this object, and then I adjusted the pixel Y by 8, which put it in the center because it was putting the bottom of it in the center. But we want the center of this in the center, and this is a 16 by 16 game. And then we generate as a child object, which the reason we do that is because I don't think it will really matter, but it sticks to the parent object, so it won't move off the screen. And then I will go over what this is in a second. So we generate that object, that's it. We don't want to ever do that again. So start goes to waiting, and this is pretty much your default motion, right? This is where it's pretty much going to be most of the time if you're not doing something. So it changes unconditionally after generating the object, comes here to waiting. Now, waiting cannot go anywhere except to selected, and it goes to selected when slot selected is equal to 1. This is slot 1, right? We're editing slot 1, so the only time this one should ever highlight is when slot 1 is selected, which is exactly what this says. Slot 1 slot selected is equal to 1. Then it comes to selected. Now, this is just to make sure it turns yellow again because I'm using takes over a motion, right? So it will not turn blue again. I know it has the blue box there, but it will not turn blue because I put takes over a motion. And the reason I did this is because when you use selected and you use an item, and then it goes to check the quantity, which I'll get to that, I want it to stay yellow. So all of these also have takes over a motion, right? And then selected will go to reset to blue when it's not equal to 1. So we put equal to 1 and we put the not symbol right there. Or you could put this exclamation point equals. I believe that is also the equivalent of the same thing. And then reset to blue doesn't take over motion, it has the motion blue. So it will turn blue and then we'll go back to waiting, which takes over, which means waiting will now be blue. So it goes to selected, and now we want to use our item, right? So I have it set to when I push X, which for me is Q on the keyboard, and slot 1 is equal to 1. So it's double checking that it's still selected, or sorry, it's checking to make sure I push this button on press, and it's also checking to see if slot 1 is equal to 1, which means it's a red mushroom. So if it's a red mushroom when we push X, it's going to use a red mushroom. If it's 2, which is a green mushroom in our system, it's going to go to this one. If it's 3, it's going to go to this one. Right? So all these, the only thing you have to edit is if slot 1 is equal to 1, 2, or 3. 5, 6, 7, 8, 4, all the numbers for every item that you have. You will just have to keep making more of these. And then if the quantity of slot 1 is equal to 0, it's going to go to check quantity. And that will be the same for all of these. Now, in the actual action to use a red mushroom, this is where you're going to put your effects of your item, right? So if using a red mushroom gives you health, this is where you're going to put that. Player health plus whatever. Or execute action, but you cannot execute an action between a menu scene item and a non-menu scene item. So if I put execute action player heal or something, or player jump, it's not going to work because they're on two different scenes. So that's something to keep in mind. So I would just put your effects here, like player HP plus 1, right? Red mushroom. And then what you're going to need for this system is red mushrooms minus 1, right? Because we're using a red mushroom. And slot 1 quantity is going to go down by 1 as well, because what's in slot 1 is going down. You could also change this to slot 1 quantity equals red mushrooms, but then when you get here, you'd have to change that to green mushrooms. So instead, I just did slot 1 quantity minus 1 as well, and then you can just copy and paste it. Or when you make this one and paste it, you won't have to edit it because it's still just slot 1 quantity minus 1. You only have to edit this one, which is green mushrooms, blue mushrooms in this one, and red in the other, right? So that is this train of actions, right? And then this will go back to selected after certain time passes, just to make sure the player doesn't push the button too fast. 0.5 was a little long, so you might want to use like 0.25 or something, because I noticed when I was testing and I was trying to spam the button, 0.5 still stopped me, so it might be a little too long. And then if slot 1 common, slot 1 quantity is over 1 still. So if it's over 1, it's just going to go back to selected so that you can push the button again, right? So after time, and if we have another item to use, it will just go back here. Pretty simple. So that's all of this, and then once it's back at selected, which means we still have one, if the slot selected is not 1, which is what this means, it's going to reset to blue and then unconditionally go here. This is literally just to change the animation to the blue box. Excuse me if I lose my voice. I've been talking straight for like 3 hours as I recorded the initial version of this, and no audio, so here we go again. So this is literally just to change it back to a blue motion, because these ones don't have motions. Now, when it goes to check quantity, it's going to jump up here. Check quantity doesn't really do anything itself. So if slot 1 quantity is equal to 0, is not equal to 0, right? Which means there's still objects there. It doesn't need to change, right? So it can just go to no change, go to next. And then it will execute object action slot 2 check quantity. So it will make sure that slot 2 checks slot 3, and so on, you know? So that's basically what that does. And then, again, unconditionally goes back to waiting. Now, waiting, this can actually go. This was before I added the system to use items. I needed a way to call check quantity, so ignore that link that I deleted. Now, if slot 1 quantity is equal to 0 and slot 2 quantity is above 0, we are going to change slot 1 to what's in slot 2, right? Because we want to move everything over. We don't want slot 1 to be empty and something to be sitting in slot 2. So, slot 1 will become slot 2, simple. Slot 1 quantity will become slot 2 quantity, simple. Slot 2 will become nothing, which 0 is nothing. So this item that is in slot 2 will go back to nothing, right? And then slot 2 quantity will become 0 because there's nothing there. We've moved it to slot 1 now. It's officially slot 1. Slot 2 should be empty. And then we will execute object action slot 2 check quantity. So then when it checks quantity, it will check slot 3 and see if what's in slot 3 needs to move to slot 2, which it should because slot 2 is empty. But if there's nothing there, obviously it won't move it. So when we do that, it's going to go here, set slot 1 to slot 2, and then slot 2 is going to go here. And then it's going to check, is there something in slot 3? No. If there's not, then it's just going to go back to blue, or whatever color it is. And then if there is something in slot 3, it's going to do the exact same thing we just did. It's going to become slot 3, and slot 3 will become nothing. So you'll just have to change all these variables to slot 2 equals what's in slot 3, and then slot 3 equal to 0. And again, it's all the same. You just have to change it for each slot, each variable. So it really can be a pain. And then, let's see, and all of these change unconditionally back to waiting once they do this, right? So this becomes, we're back to slot 1, this becomes slot 2 with these, slot 2 becomes nothing, and then slot 2 checks if it needs to become slot 3. And it's literally just going to do the same thing. And if you still have something in slot 1, which there's a reason this is here, because you can call check quantity through the inventory management thing. So this doesn't matter yet, because you're probably wondering like, well, okay, the only way to call this is by using the item, so there has to be nothing there. There is another way to call this, it's just not in here. So if there's no change, we still want to check if slot 2 should become slot 3. So we're going to just put this, and then unconditionally goes back to waiting. And that's this entire object. And then if I didn't go over this one, check quantity. Again, if there's nothing left in the slot, but it doesn't need to become slot 2, we're just going to set slot 1 to 0 so that there's no object there. That's it, because 0 is nothing. Slot 2, exactly the same, except it's going to be anything that was slot 1 in the previous one is going to be slot 2. Anything that was slot 2 is going to be slot 3. And then slot 3 is going to be exactly the same, except there is no slot 4 in this demo, so it doesn't need to check what's in slot 4. So the only difference between slot 3 and the rest is that there isn't this connection here, because there's no slot 4 to check, so there's no reason to have one. But if you have 10 slots, slots 1 through 9 are going to look like this. And then slot 10 is going to look like this. Right? And then actually, yeah, and then it doesn't need this one either, sorry, because there's no slot 4 to call. But yeah, if you have more slots, all of them will look like this except the last one, which will just cut those two things based on the next slots. So that covers pretty much all the hard stuff. Now, the last thing we need is a manager, right? Also, just in case this wasn't obvious, make sure your groups, the collectibles group or items group, whatever you call it, make sure the items you can pick up are in that group, and then make sure attack detection is set for player. And then the rest, like I said, go in HUD. Pretty simple. Now the inventory manager. default state, again, make sure they all say not affected by gravity. This is a top-down game, so I don't know if gravity affects anything, but if you're in a side-scroller, this will literally fall. So like your slots, when you open your inventory, they will just fall down. So make sure not affected by gravity. We're going to use hide menu screen because, like I said, I finished my 3-part series with no audio. So I did the part where I make it like a pop-up inventory. We're going to change game speed. Okay, just in case you don't know where this is, hide screen menu, I believe is page 3. Yeah, page 3, down here. So we're going to hide menu, hide all except default. If you don't have this checked, it says it will just hide the last one shown, which should still be the inventory, but maybe you're making a super advanced one, so be careful if you uncheck that. Be careful if you do check it and have other ones. Just know that that could be the cause of your issues if you're having a menu disappear that you don't want to disappear. We're going to change game speed 100%, which is the default. But basically what default is, it's also my uninventory, if you will. So like this stuff technically doesn't matter because it's already hidden. It's already at 100% game speed for objects, effects, and tiles. And slot selected is already 0. But this is also my setting things back to default, so that's why I have to put these here. So I just have if I push A, which is spacebar, as I set in my control keys management, A, spacebar. If I push spacebar, it will show menu screen. It's in Japanese because, like I said, this was a sample pack. But this is going to be the one that shows my inventory. I know this one's called inventory, but this one has the inventory manager on it, so excuse the confusion. Yeah, so that's going to make it pop up. And then we're going to put game speed 0 for objects, effects, and tiles. We don't want menu related because then you can't scroll through the menu, right? Which that's what this is, an inventory menu. From inventory, we can go back if we push A, which is spacebar, to turn it off. All these arrows that go back are literally the same. They're just saying if I push spacebar again, it's going to turn the inventory off. So just know you can copy and paste this and put it on all of your slots. If you have 200 slots, paste this to every one. Now, this part is really simple. If you have a lot of slots, it will be a pain in the butt, but we only have 3. So select slot 1, which is always going to be the first slot when you push spacebar. It will go from here and unconditionally go to slot 1. It will set the slot selected to 1, and it will execute slot 1 selected, which now that I have this, it probably doesn't even have to, but like I said, this was like a 3-part series, so initially it had to. And then all of these conditions here are just if you push left or right. So if you push right, it's going to go from slot 1 to slot 2. If you push right from slot 2, it's going to go to slot 3. If you push right on slot 3, which is my last one, it will reset to the left side and go to slot 1. And just the opposite, if you push left on slot 1, it will go to slot 3. If you push left on slot 2, on slot 3, it will go to slot 2. And if you push left on slot 2, it will go to slot 1. Just like these arrows. Literally, if you do this arrow, it will go from this one to this one. So that's super simple. That's all this object does. It just says, hey, turn the inventory on and go from here to here if you push these buttons. Now, in my slots, I did add these text displays, which just show the quantity, right? There's a black one. I'll show you how you make one of these. you just leave it. This is the default, not touching anything. Put the slot that you're on, this is slot 1, common, slot 1 quantity. So it's going to be, the number it's going to show is this, show as text, it's going to be black. Select your font. I'm just going to use one of the default fonts. And then you're going to have to set the offset as you see fit. And then this is going to be the size, right? And I'm going to push cancel. You push OK, but I'm going to push cancel. And then I just did it again as a white one. And you'll see that because the offset here is 18, and they're exactly the same, and the offset here is 17, it will be white text with a black outline, which makes it easier to see when there's things behind it. And all of these have this, except the only difference is the variable is slot 3 quantity, the variable here is slot 2, the variable here for both of these is slot 1. Literally it. Super simple. And now the last thing you need to know is how to set up the menu scene. So, like I said, the Japanese thing, this one is where the actual slots are. You can see I put my slot 1, I put my slot 2, and I put my slot 3. That's it. And I made another page, and then here I put my inventory manager. Right? This one doesn't matter where it's at. These ones, this is where it's going to be on your screen. So you're going to move these around, do whatever you want. You can put them up here. And you'll see when I do the test run, they'll be up there. Now, here, in all of your levels that the inventory is going to be accessible, you will have to set this in your scene settings. Your default menu screen is going to be inventory, or whatever you named it. This is the one with the inventory manager. If you have a HP bar, stamina bar, just put all of that on this one, or put this on that one. You know, it's super easy. Just put whichever one you have your HUD on here. So I guess this one should have just been called HUD. Sorry. And then the preload, this one, your other one, which should be inventory. So it should be, this should be HUD, this should be inventory. And then this will have it ready so that when you push the button, just in case you have a lot to load, it won't like lag for a second. So let's try it out. You can see I just threw some mushrooms down, and we'll see how it all works. So you can see the attack detection. You can see how when I walk into them, they disappear. When I push spacebar, I cannot move. It looks a little silly that it goes up and down when I push left and right, but I guess you can't tell that I'm pushing left and right. You'll just have to take my word for it. But you can see it highlights the one, and then if I push my use button, which I set to Q, it goes down. We used it. And then it becomes the next one. It moves it up. This one becomes 0. We can use these. This one moves up. Now they're all gone. We have no items. You see? It works perfectly fine. Now, just to show you, if you want a on-screen inventory where it's showing all the time, and you push like 1 to use slot 1 and 2 to use slot 2, you won't need the selected part here. You will just use when, you'll add a special button here that says 1, which you will go to control keys, and then you can add a new key, and then when they push 1 on the keyboard, and then you can name it slot 1. So here you would just change it to when they push slot 1, which will be 1, as you just saw me set, it will use the item, right? And you'd put that for all of these instead of X. And then obviously, if you want it like that, you need it to show all the time, right? So just to show you how it would look, first I'm going to move this back just because it bugs me because it's a left and right system. And then I'm not going to change game speed. So I'm just going to push this. This will hide it from the game. So even though this line is here, it won't do it. That's basically what this means, like don't do. So I don't have to delete it. I can leave it here so that I can upload this for you guys. And I just uncheck that and it's back to functioning how I wanted it. Okay, so now it's not going to do that. And then you'll see I can push spacebar. Obviously, you would get rid of the movement of this if you were using slots. So you wouldn't need this. I mean, you don't even need this entire object, right? If you're using a constantly on-screen inventory, you would just put these slots on your HUD layer. You wouldn't even need this entire object. But since I already have this object, I'm just trying to show you how it would look. Yeah, so it would just all the time be there. And it would be like that. And it wouldn't highlight, obviously, because, you're just pushing the button. You're not actually doing it that way. But as you can see, it's there. We can turn it back off. We can turn it back on. So you would just, literally, if you did this and you want this kind of inventory where it's just always here, you would just delete this entire thing. And then you would put these slots on the HUD layer. So like your HP bar would be here, your stamina bar, your avatar portrait, or whatever you're putting there. It would just all be there. This entire object wouldn't exist. And you'd only need one of these because these would be on this one. And yeah, and then the selected thing wouldn't be here. I think I pretty much covered everything. If you have any questions, just throw down a comment. I know this was still kind of long. I meant to make it into a multiple part video where I did piece by piece, but like I said, I had to re-record it, so I didn't really have pieces to show you because it's all already done. So yes, as you can see, I left it like this. We could pick it up in this order. We can pick it up in this order. So it works no matter what order we pick stuff up in. Oh, except red. Oh no. I found a bug. So slot 3 is equal to 1. Oh no, I found a bug. It's probably this. Slot 3 equals 0. Oh, yeah. Okay. Slot 3 equals 0. I believe I changed that. Yeah, slot 2 is not equal to. Okay, I changed these objects before, so I just got to fix that. Slot 3 equals 1. Slot 3 equals 2. Slot 3 equals 3. Not. If slot 3 equals 1. Slot 3 equals 2. Alright, well, I will fix it. It's probably something silly, but I don't want to elongate the video just to figure it out. It's actually probably this right here. Sorry. Slot 3 equals 1. Slot 3 quantity equal red mushrooms. That sounds right. Slot 2 equals 1. Slot 2 equals red mushrooms. So, slot 3 equals 0. Oh, this is the issue right here. This should be OR, and this should be any condition. So basically it just wasn't going on from there. So just to show that we fixed it, boom, boom, it works. Right? So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Leave a like, leave a comment. If you have questions, I'll be happy to help you. This is how you can make both of those inventory systems. I will upload this to itch.io. I don't know how long that takes, so it won't be in the description for a little while, but once it's done, I'll put it in there, as well as my Twitch, which I will, sometimes I stream, and I will stream, maybe I could stream like tutorials live or help fix bugs, etc. And I will also put my Twitter. If you need help, you can send tweets. And like I said, leave a comment if you have questions. Don't forget to join the Pixel Game Maker Discord, which you can find off the Steam forums. And yeah, I guess I will see you in the next tutorial.